Hi, I'm Tess,
Hi, I'm Sarah, and we are.
the Happy Edit Sisters. Happiness isn't just being happy, it's an embodied feeling that starts with how we approach life, our actions, and our mindset. Everyone has a range of emotions, and that's a good thing.
Join us as we dive into what it means to be happy and how we build a foundation for happiness through different lenses.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Tess. How
How
are
are you
you?
today? Oh,
Oh, we jumped over each other.
you first. How are
You
you?
good, thank you. Yeah, I'm good. So I'm currently sat in my cabin in a very wet and rainy Manchester. The weather has definitely took a turn, and it's just rained all night and all day. Um,
Ah,
But it's
autumn
still
is
quite
coming.
warm. Autumn is definitely coming. The dog, Rosa, we mention her quite a few times, don't we, on the podcast? She was not very impressed going for a walk earlier.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. We have the exact opposite weather here in northern Spain. It's sunny, it's beautiful. It is cooler today than it has been. So yes, I guess autumn is coming, but I'm still enjoying the sun
We should do a
before we
swapsy,
get
I think.
rain. It's just before it just turns into wet puddles of rain. And we have a wonderful guest here today. Hello, Shannon.
Hi, I'm so excited to hear you both talk about weather because I really nerd out about weather.
So do we.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like a nice way to like introduce, the listener into like where we are when we are right in the moment. Okay, this is what we see. This is how we're feeling. Currently, my windows are closed and I am sweating.
And coming from the UK, it's something that we talk about all the time. It's our like topic of conversation.
Yeah, same here. So I'm in Canada, like 3 hours north of Toronto. It got down to 4 degrees Celsius this morning. So very close to freezing. So it's definitely fall, but it's sunny and warm right now. And I love this time of year when it's like right before the trees are changing. And um, yeah, it's pretty amazing out.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But yeah, that's cold already. 4 degrees.
Yep.
Hoo-hoo. Okay, so let me introduce you, Shannon, first. So on the call today, we have a wonderful teacher of mine, Shannon Crow. Shannon Crow is a yoga teacher, trainer, and the host of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. So if you guys haven't been on that and you are a yoga teacher, you're into yoga, definitely recommend checking out her podcast. It's amazing. So many wonderful topics get brought up onto that podcast. She is passionate about helping yoga teachers to specialize so that they stand out with their unique yoga offerings. Shannon is also the founder of the Pelvic Health Professionals, of which I am also part of, and it's amazing. If you're into pelvic health, definitely go check her Pelvic Health Professionals out. She's also a mom to her three best teachers. I love that. And in her spare time, she can be found hiking, gardening, swimming, and skiing on the Bruce Peninsula of Ontario, Canada, with her partner, Sean. So, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
It's so lovely that you're here. It'd be really, really good just for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, Shannon, and whether Tess has missed anything off in her introduction or not.
Um, that's like the intro that I give when people say like, "What do you do?" Here's the work that I do, and also I'm a mom. Like I feel like that's a big part of my identity. And I think the underneath the like the things that I don't always show online or that people don't always know about is like I've been doing the podcast now for 7 years. The membership, I feel like, is like Pelvic Health Professionals. I feel like it might be coming up to 4 years, or maybe we're in our fourth year. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. And sometimes it's really tough. Like, I feel like there are some really tough days when you're running your own business and when you're a parent. And honestly, just when you're a human, like on the planet, trying to figure things out. We were still in the midst of, or we're through a pandemic, and there's a lot coming at us as humans. And I definitely feel that. And I've been talking about it a little bit more on the podcast because I feel like sometimes it's tempting to just be like, here are the great things going on in life, not here are the tough things.
Yeah. And it's those tough things that, as you say, they're part of life. So we need to acknowledge them as much as we acknowledge the good things. Maybe not, ruminate on them or like get stuck in them, but at least acknowledge them. That's a huge part of life. So why just block it out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
So one of the questions that we like to ask our guests is, what does happiness mean to you?
I feel like happiness is really about, for me anyway, when I feel like I can really be in the moment. And I do feel this a lot when my kids get together. I kind of feel it when they are talking about their own lives or they're talking amongst themselves. And I think it's when I am not trying to control the situation. So it doesn't always happen with the kids, but that's an easy one to think about. One thing that I implemented this year, because as you said, I love gardening. I love growing food and like digging in the dirt and just seeing what I can grow, or all kinds of plants, not just food plants, but definitely vegetables and fruit. I love growing those. And one thing that I implemented this year is going out and walking in the garden before I do anything. Like, I'm very tempted to just dive in and start doing things, but instead I thought, what happens if I walk around and just look at what's happening without trying to do anything, without trying to control anything, without worrying about the outcome, just really being in the moment, being present and noticing. And I think that's where I feel like those moments of joy. So it might be, a meal with my family, or just a moment where they're all I can just sit back and enjoy it, like witness it.
That sounds amazing. It made me think about, suppose in my own life actually, of how I might kind of be doing different tasks, or I'm involved in something and needing to know what's going to happen next and know what's going to happen next. But actually, reflecting on my own family life, there's nothing better actually than kind of putting a pizza in the oven and sitting and watching a film with the girls. I've got two girls, and just kind of not having any expectations. This is just what we're doing now. We don't have to do anything else. Or going for a walk. We love going for a walk. It usually takes the girls about half an hour to get into it. But once they're half an hour in, they embrace the walk. And just there's a particular walk that we go on that Tess and my brother has also been on, where it's in the Peak District, so in the north of England. And you kind of get to the top of this hill, and then you can see the whole of the of Kinder, the Kinder kind of mountain range. And it's breathtaking, and just going up there and being like, oh, that's amazing. So yeah, that kind of brought that up for me,
I love
Shannon.
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
I love what you said as well about not like controlling things. And I think
Mm.
so often our stress and our like all the sort of difficult things that we, bring up for ourselves comes from feeling like we need to control everything. And I put both hands up saying, this is definitely me. Like, I want to control everything, and it's very difficult for me to be like, no, just let it go, just go with the flow. And when I am in those moments and you're just letting things flow, I totally agree. Like, that's such a happy moment, isn't it? And it's not, it's not necessarily everything has to be perfect in my life, but it's just everything is flowing like it should. And it's just, you're not holding things back. You're not forcing things to be in a certain way. They're just are the way they are. And I just think that that is such a really interesting aspect to put on what happiness can mean to someone, right? It's just allowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am fully with you and like wanting to control how things go. I'm all in for planning things. Let's say like the next thing coming up is Thanksgiving weekend. And then I love to plan food and what kind of napkins we're going to have and maybe a centerpiece for the table or something. Like I'm thinking about all of those things, and my kids appreciate the ritual of that. They're all adults now, by the way. They're like 18, 20, 25. And at the same time, that's not where the joy comes from. Like our joy and happiness for Thanksgiving meal and get together does not hinge on what kind of centerpiece or if I have the right napkins. But it's funny that we get sold this idea that that's where it's going to come from. And I know, like, from when my kids were little, you buy them toys or you might buy them like a big experience. I remember taking the kids for a week of time in Toronto and we had all of these activities planned. Sean and I took them on the subway and that was the most fun. Like they just wanted to ride the subway over and over again. I was like, here we are. Like we booked really expensive things for them to do all week. And now they're finding their most joy in the subway.
It's like, when you buy your pet, like, if you have a cat, for example, you buy them a toy and then you get them out of the box and then they're like, oh, box. It's like,
exactly.
Man, I should have just got you a new box.
Yeah.
Kids are the same with the boxes as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I totally get that. How do you think your perception of happiness has changed over the years? Have you always had this perception of like, okay, I can be happy when I'm not controlling and just allowing things, or has that changed?
It's definitely changed. I mean, the time before having kids, oh gosh, it's hard to remember, like thinking back of like what would make me happy or the moments of happiness. And then anyone who's had young children, I don't know if other people feel this, but I remember having kids and thinking, oh my gosh, what did I do with my time before I had children? And then there have been times where, I just think, okay, if I had more time or if I had this thing, I would be happier. And as I got older, like I'm 46 now, I would be turning 47. As I've gotten older, I realized like that's not where the happiness is. It's in these really tiny moments. And it doesn't have to be with having kids. Like that's an easy one for me to come up with, but it could be just in this small moment where you're like having a conversation with a good friend, or you wake up and you're just sitting there with your tea and, you notice the sunrise or something, or you just feel like, oh, I have this moment of time where I can just write in my journal or whatever. It's really tiny moments for me of happiness. And I learned a long time ago that if I really let go of my expectations, like the days where it feels like, wow, what a fun day. I did not plan it all out. I didn't know where it was going. So that's changed.
Yeah, that's something that, so as a therapist, that I would say quite often to my clients is that we quite often live in the past and quite often live in the future, but we very rarely live in the moment of now. And it is those moments, isn't it? Like you say, those small moments that actually bring the most happiness and joy, without expectation.
Yeah. I think meditation really helped me deal with that, like, or experience that. Once I started doing meditation, I was like, oh, this is what it's like to be in the present moment where I'm not like planning my future or ruminating over what happened in the past or thinking back. Yeah.
Yeah. I think meditation is really good for that, but it can be so difficult when you get started with it. Like in my personal experience, my first interactions with meditation was like leading me to panic attacks because I was just like, I can't do it. I can't leave these thoughts. What are you talking about? What do you mean? I need to focus on my breath. and it really took time for me to be comfortable with like being in the now, and being comfortable just being there. So if anyone is listening and they're like, meditation, like I get it, we all get it. I think everyone that's done meditation, like very few people just jump straight into it and go, oh, this is really easy and fun and I love it, right? Like it's usually like a process, at least from the people I've worked with and spoken to.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that that's definitely something that's difficult for people. And that's why I think my, the walk outside in my garden before I do anything, I really kind of feel like that's a walking meditation where my only job is to notice things. I can take photos if I find something really cool. Not that there are rules around it, but I mean, my whole goal, or what I really noticed brings me joy, is by really just noticing. And I did this when I was a kid. Like I'd go walking. We had a forest where I grew up, and I'd go walking and I'd just be looking at like bugs and trees and leaves and no agenda, right? No, like there was no science project to do. I didn't have to identify all the trees. I didn't have to do any work. I just was out there enjoying nature. So, yeah.
Do you think that there's like certain things in nature that like you connect with more, that like maybe, help with that? Or do you think it's just in general just being out in nature?
I think so. I I've been really open on my Instagram that I struggled to get outside in the winter. Like it gets cold where I am. It can snow a foot and a half in a very short time. It can be like you can't walk, you can ski a little bit, or or it could be a blizzard for days. Sometimes we can't drive. So we get a pile of winter where I am. It's just kind of like a snow globe around the Great Lakes. And so I decided, okay, what does really help me is getting outside. I knew that, but there are days where I'm like, who would want to walk outside when, like, literally, there's a little cartoon about this, but like the air hurts my face, it's windy, I don't want to be out there, it's gray, the sun's not even out. What is there to see? Just like kind of a white world. But I realized that when I make the effort to go out on a regular basis, there's a huge difference that happens within me. And so I don't think there's one thing in nature. Like, I think it's getting out there more. I think probably long ago, my ancestors were just outside more often. I realized last year, 2 years ago, I went back home to make maple syrup with my dad. And I realized, wow, we're really out. I grew up doing that. I grew up being outside when it's still cold in the spring when maple syrup starts to happen here in Canada. A lot of people are not feeling like, oh, this is the time to get outside. But I realized if I can just dress for the weather and embrace it, it makes a huge difference for me. Whatever it is, fresh air. I feel like there's a huge healing that can happen just by being out in nature.
Definitely. Definitely. You talking about making maple syrup. When I was a kid in Wisconsin, up north Wisconsin, we did that with my grandparents' farm as well. And yeah, I mean, we would be like carrying stuff on sleds, like it was still snowy when we would be tapping the trees. And by no means we did it to the same extent that you guys do. It was just for the family. It was just for us. But I definitely have really fond memories of that as a kid. And I think that you're right, like just changing as you said before, changing your expectations, changing your perception of when you're going outside, not needing anything specific from it, not wanting to control it, but just enjoying that time, whatever it is. I think that that's a really powerful thing for sure.
Yeah. And then noticing, like, one day I would go to this one spot and take a picture almost every day of just this little stream. It was like nothing, fantastic that would be in like a piece of artwork or anything, but just noticing like the level of the water and the trees that change through the seasons. There's always something that is changing out in nature. And I think noticing that made me, I don't know, it made a huge shift in my life, getting outside daily. And like you said, making the maple syrup, like some people might be thinking, oh my gosh, it's a ton of work, which it is, as you know. Even if you're
Yes.
making it on small scale, if you wanted to make a tiny bit, it's a lot of work. But I think because it's so much outside work, there's something that people really gravitate towards. I know lots of people who make maple syrup, and they just love to be reminded of it again.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's a whole, like, it's a, it's a process, it's a tradition. It's like it was my grandparents and my dad bringing it down to us, and I think that's a really beautiful thing as well. And so it's all part of it, right? You're spending this time in nature, you're with multiple generations. At least in our family, we were with multiple generations. We were, as kids, very much playing around, goofing around, like I'm sure we were maybe not as helpful as we could have been. But it added to the atmosphere. It was a family thing, it was a connection thing. So not only were you connecting to nature, but you were connecting with your family, you were connecting with these traditions that have been passed down over generations. And I think it is really cool that we can do that. And I think spending time in nature, at least in my family, has been a huge part of passing down traditions, like going for hikes, spending time outside, exploring the outdoors, learning about the world around us, and not just, in a book, but really interacting with it and feeling it. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a huge part, at least in my opinion, my life, of my own happiness, and things that I can turn back to, my little happy spots when I'm having, stressful situations. I can be like, okay, let's go back to my little happy spot. Okay, usually that's in nature, usually that's in, time that I spent connected with my friends, my family outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's really lovely hearing both your kind of experiences of being in nature and with your families. I suppose being in Manchester and it being quite a big city, quite often we'd spend time in the city, in quite built up areas, but we're really, really fortunate where we live that we've got like a local park, and we're literally 20 minutes drive away from the countryside. And I think for me and my husband and the two girls, during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, we became so grateful the fact that we literally walked around the corner and we had this lovely park that we could go for our daily walk to. And as we were able to kind of come out of lockdown a little bit and kind of go a bit further afield, we then, we ordered some hiking books, like family hiking books that we could go on to follow the hikes on. And I think definitely for me and Connor, I think that really kind of ignited a real love to be going out into nature and exploring it. And there's a few, just as you were talking about the stream, the little stream, there's a few walks that we've been on where we tended to go in a certain season, and then we went in, I think, springtime maybe, where normally we'd go up during the winter because it's a little bit more covered, and then we went into spring, going into summer, and we were like, oh, we've never seen it like this before, it looks so different. So then we purposely then started to go in different seasons so that we could see the difference. And we were like, I didn't realize that building was over there because that's normally covered. So yeah, it's lovely.
I love that you brought up hiking, and that you got some books, and I'm guessing found some trails near you. So we have a really great trail up here. It's called the Bruce Trail, and it goes all the way from Tobermory down to Niagara Falls. So it's really far. Um, And and we signed up to do like Tobermory to Wyerton, which is 162 kilometers and 18 hikes. And we signed up with a group. And I think that's the other thing, is when you find those other outdoorsy people. It could be like people who like to find birds or identify plants or garden or hike, ski, like any kind of outdoor sport. I think that it really can boost that. Like you'll start to find, I don't know, I found people who are really interested in native gardening, like native plants and helping pollinators. We've now signed up to become hike leaders. Like it also, there's a social aspect to being out in nature that I really appreciate also. Sometimes I like to be out there all by myself, but sometimes it's pretty cool to meet up with other people. The other thing that I love right now is a couple of apps, like one that helps me identify plants, and the Merlin app helps me identify birds just by the sound around me.
Yeah, the app is really cool.
Yeah,
I
like
found out about that app
that
last year, and it's like, what?
And I think the more we can be aware of what's happening in nature, the more we kind of care for it. Like to give you an example, so because I garden outside and I had some horse compost delivered, and in that horse compost came stinging nettle. I don't know if you've ever touched stinging nettle.
Yeah.
It gets its name for a very good reason. Like if you just brush against it, it can really sting for like an hour. And I was like, I got to get rid of this. Like, I hate this plant. I've touched it while I'm gardening. Okay, it's out of here. So I was going to come back with my gloves. The next day, it was covered in this caterpillar. And I was like, oh, okay, you really like that. Okay, well, I won't get rid of it right now. I'll leave it. So I started researching which caterpillar this was, what butterfly it turns into. And then I started researching more on stinging nettle and found out like we can make tea out of it. We can eat it. Like it's a really great plant for many reasons, even though I just thought this is a horrible weed and I have to get rid of it. So I think the more we can learn about nature, the more, just me telling this story might be like someone's like, oh, I might try and grow some stinging nettle, or I might pause before I just rip something out. I might research like what creature depends on this.
Yeah, definitely. And in this day and age, so I think more and more people are coming back to nature, right? We're realizing how important it is, how long we've been disconnected from it. And unfortunately, our world is definitely showing that we've been quite disconnected from it, and I think like you say, the more that we do that, not only do we feel more connected to nature, but nature benefits, because if we learn about it, we want to protect it. We want, and then it's like this, it's a happy cycle.
It really is. It is.
And we're all for the happiness here.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
When you have moments, because you mentioned earlier, there's been times throughout this especially this last year, and you've been bringing up on the podcast, how to, on your podcast, the Connected Yoga Teacher, how to support yourself during those difficult times. What have you noticed that has benefited you the most over these last, couple of years to support you?
What's really interesting is we've had some like pretty heavy family stuff going on and some pretty heavy times of grief in amongst the pandemic, right? So I would say overall, my nervous system is like, okay, I don't don't want any more. And things in life just come at us sometimes, depending on the season. So on top of like life is busy, I run my own business, I've got a lot of decisions to make. Then there's been like big family things going on. And I noticed, because I have AirPods, so I can go outside and, listen to audiobooks, listen to podcasts, or talk to a friend outside. I noticed that the moment someone calls me, let's say it's a family call and it's like it's going to be something stressful, I will like look at the phone, decide, can I answer this? Can I do this right now? And then get my boots on and like go outside and garden while I'm listening. Like there is a definite connection to how I can process things better outside while I'm outside, or let's say I've had one of those difficult days with this grief where I just I'm like, okay, as soon as I get my work done, I tell my family, like, I need some garden time. And I've been using it sort of as therapy. I also go to therapy, just to be clear. But in between, and I found that it's really been helpful. Like, it has really helped. My daughter looked out one day and she's like, what were you doing like with this? I was really throwing some lumps of dirt that had grass in them. And I found it so therapeutic that I could like really put so much effort into it. And my therapist was like, this makes complete sense, where you're like moving your body at the same time that you are processing this stuff that's like, it's pretty heavy. It's, you kind of want to work through it in that way. So I find that the benefits of that, and my body just knowing that, like, okay, I'm going to get my boots on and take this call outside.
I was just going to say thank you for sharing that experience with us and with the listeners as well. Yeah, I think sometimes it's really important, isn't it, to, as we're processing something, to also be doing something else at the same time to help regulate the nervous system, as you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, I like that as well, like regulate the nervous system, and then you're not allowing it to maybe stick as much in the body, right? When we have those stressful moments, when we have that grief or the trauma or whatever it is, a lot of times I get stuck in different areas of our body because of different signals that our body is sending out, and it just kind of stays there. And so moving, it makes sense to me that when you're moving, right, you're releasing that. You're not necessarily holding it in. A lot of like somatic healing work is moving those areas that you're holding on, and you're processing it, and you're not just sticking it. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's not just like getting stuck and sluggish in those areas. So it really makes a lot of sense to me. And then, you have the nature aspect of it as well, right? There's so many studies that show how beneficial connecting with nature is for our, holistic well-being. So yeah, I really like that. And yes, thank you so much for sharing that with us and the listeners.
I think also, because my therapist did say to me the last time I went to see her, when I was telling her, like, okay, this is also coming at me, like this situation in life that's beyond my control with our family. And she said to me, oh my gosh, Shannon, all that's been coming at you for the last like 3 years would make the average adult crumble. And she's like, whatever you're doing is working. And I really think it's getting outside. It's interesting. Someone said to me, oh, what does your yoga practice look like? And I'm very hesitant to say my yoga practice looks like gardening but it does, because it might be confusing if someone's not really clear on like the philosophy of yoga and how it's much more beyond like rolling out your yoga mat and asana practice. But I really think that being present outside and that can be an entire yoga practice all on its own.
I totally agree. I mean, yoga in essence is love, right? It's love to yourself, it's love to your surroundings, it's love to your community. So, when you're able to connect that, you're able to move, you're able to breathe, you're connecting the two, you're being in the moment, you're being, mindful with compassion, that is a practice. That's a practice of yoga. And I think so often we get this idea, yoga, we sell in our modern day, Western society, yoga is, as you say, rolling on a mat, doing these movements, maybe doing a little bit of breath work. But the reality is there's so much more to it. And I just think that's so beautiful that you share that. Because I think so often we get stuck in this image of what yoga has to be. And what in reality, it's just love.
Shannon, if there was any advice that you would give to your younger self, what might it be?
Oh my gosh, it would probably be about like letting things go a little bit more, definitely. Like I don't know if I would have listened, but letting go of that sort of trying to control things or make it look a certain way. Also recognizing that people are going to show up as they are. Like people are super complicated, and knowing when connections with people are a good fit based on who they are, not trying to make it into something else. I definitely could have used that when I was younger. So really understanding, uh, yeah, people are complex, and to then at the same time, I guess, while looking out at how complex people are and how they're trying to find their selves and you're trying to find yourself. Like I'm thinking of my 20s. Like, gosh, I did not understand it at all. And then knowing, I guess I'd also tell myself like you're going to feel way more comfortable with who you are later on, and just hang in there. Like it's going to get easier the more you sort of see what lights you up, like see what makes you more curious, what you're drawn to, even if other people think, oh my gosh, that sounds crazy. That's okay. That's totally okay.
I love that. I love that. Even if people think you're crazy, I love that.
It's happened. I started a farmer's market, and I just overheard an old farmer saying, I thought she was crazy. This seemed like a crazy idea. I never thought it would work, but look at here. It's working.
So trust in the crazy.
Yes, do that.
I think that that's really good. And I like how you said, like, I'm not sure I totally would have listened.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have listened.
I think so many, so it's so easy to look back, not easy maybe, but it's easier to look back and be like, okay, this is what I would have done. But really in those moments, are you really gonna listen? Like I think we have to live through these things to fully understand where it's coming from. And that's not saying that we can't listen to others and be guided and be supported, because I think we definitely can. I know we definitely can, but I think that some things in life just have to be lived. Those challenges have to be faced, and those difficult times that you're like, why did I do that, they're important too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
They
As much as we don't
definitely
want them.
shape us. Yeah, they definitely shape who we become, don't they?
They do.
Yeah. So, Shannon, at the end of every episode, we like to offer our listeners a little happy edit tool, something that they can take into their lives and maybe see if it makes them a little bit more happy and, fulfilled. Is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I think like see what it's like if you are in a place where you're like, oh gosh, I just kind of feel like you feel like there's something not quite fitting right in your life. And for me, it always happens like when fall turns into winter. I feel like I'm built to hibernate, but obviously that's not socially acceptable. um to go into full hibernation. And I just feel a little more sluggish as it changes from fall into winter. So if there's any season of your life that just feels like that, it doesn't have to be actual season of moving into hibernation, or just like more of a uncomfortableness. I would say try going outside daily. And for me, like I do, sometimes I think everyone needs to grow food. That might seem really daunting. And so I would not say that. I would say try going outside daily with no goal, like other than put my outdoor clothing on, get outside, even if it's like I've had moments where I just stepped outside and it would have been dangerous to go for a walk because it was a blizzard. So even if you're just stepping outside and like looking around, being out in nature, wherever that is, whether you're in the city or the country, it doesn't have to be a big like day-long hike to really take it in. So I would say try that. See if it makes a difference. What helped me is posting it on my Instagram stories every day, because then other people are like, oh, I'm going to do it too. And I'd be like, day 1, day 2, and all the way up until I'm like, it's day 100. And other people will post and tell me like, I'm getting outside today because you did. And it can really make a difference. So I would say just try that. Let me know how it works. I'd be so curious to hear like what your experience is if you get outside.
I'm going to say I was one of those people that contacted Shannon and was like, okay, I'm also going outside. It's been raining nonstop, but I need to go. Thank you. This is a good push. So I'm totally up there with her. Like, sometimes that having that connection and maybe even having like, a buddy that you do it with, a family member, that can keep you accountable. Like maybe it's not social media, but maybe it's just like, hey, whoever, friend, family member, person down the street from you.
Yeah,
Like,
for me, it was my neighbor's dog. He would come to my door every morning at 7 barking. I'd be
love
like,
it.
okay, we're going for our walk now.
It's time,
brilliant.
Shannon. It's time.
I really like, Shannon, how you said, actually there might be times where you can't go for a walk because of, maybe it is the circumstances with the weather. It could be someone physically can't get out for that walk, but actually just stepping outside into maybe the garden, stepping outside of the front door, maybe even just opening the front door, just kind of allowing that air to come in, allowing you to breathe that air in, feels really, really important and really
Yeah.
helpful.
Mm-hmm. And my biggest thing has been now learning how to dress for the weather. Like I can go out in a lot of weather now because I just find better clothing options. And sometimes it's a full snowsuit like a little kid.
Love it.
Whatever works to keep you comfortable, right?
That's right.
I
Love
know
it.
that's something that we always say is it's not the weather that's the problem, it's how we dress.
So true. It's so true.
It is. It is. Well, Shannon, if there's anything else that you'd like to share before we ask you to then share, your details, please let us know. Is there anything that you want our listeners to know?
I think the only other thing that helps me when I'm walking outside is taking photos because I notice really tiny things like, there might be a really cool spider web or a leaf that looks a certain way, dewdrops on something. So I love to take photos. I mean, my my Google Photos is full of nature photos. If someone gets that, but I just it helps me be really in the moment. So as much as technology is kind of can pull us out of the moment, I think you can use it also to bring yourself back into that moment.
Love it. I'm really up for photography too. I think photography can help us look at the world in a different way. And I really like that you use that just as like your mindfulness aspect, right? Of like zoning in on little details. That's really cool. So if the listeners want to learn more about you or connect with you, how do they do that?
I would say go have a listen to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast if you want to learn about, being a yoga teacher or learn more about yoga or being an entrepreneur. And if you have a pelvis and you're like, well, I'd really like to learn about like pelvic floor and all of that stuff, then pelvichealthprofessionals.com is where to go.
Yes, and I highly recommend both. So if you're interested in either of those, go check them out because it has been such an amazing two aspects of that I've really learned from. So thank you, Shannon, so much for
I
all
should
that you
also
have
say,
given
like,
me.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, if you want to see like some get outside posts and garden posts, that's on Instagram. So it's at the Connected Yoga Teacher.
Love it. All of those things will be put in the show notes as well. So if people are like, wait, what was that? You'll find them in the show notes. Thank you, Shannon, so much for joining us today, for being such an inspiration in my life. And yeah, just thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Tess and Sarah. It was fantastic to be here.
Oh, thank you, Shannon, for being here. And if people do want to share their stories of getting out in nature, please do go onto Shannon's Instagram and share those stories and experiences with her as well. Thank
That'd be
you.
so fun. Tag this podcast and tag me. I'd love to see those.
Yeah. Please do. Please do. We all love nature.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
At the Happy Edit podcast, we're mindful that the podcast is not a replacement of therapy. If you do need further support, please do contact us on our contact details in the show notes. And we're more than happy to offer further support and guidance and direct you to places like the counselling directory or therapy directories. If you do also need further support, we would also recommend you contacting your primary healthcare provider. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you all soon.